Today, we're going to talk about something pretty disturbing: how a system that's supposed to keep students safe is being turned into a weapon to kick them out of school.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What happens when the very rules designed to stop violence are instead used to target students, especially students that a school might find inconvenient or too expensive or just difficult? And let's be really clear here. We are not talking about legitimate safety threats. No way. This is about schools twisting these procedures, using the language of safety to justify pushing out specific kids. And we see it happen again and again to students with disabilities and students of color. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at how safety itself becomes a weapon. Then we'll break down what a real threat assessment is supposed to look like. After that, we'll dive into how the system is abused, show you the data that proves it, and, this is the most important part, we'll give you a playbook on how to fight back. All right, first up, how is the very word safety being weaponized? Well, it's a powerful word, right? Schools can use it to justify all sorts of things, not to prevent harm, but to push kids out of the classroom they have a legal right to be in. Okay, so to really understand how this system gets abused, we first have to know how it's supposed to work. What does a proper, evidence-based threat assessment actually look like? Let's take a look at the gold standard.
You know, this whole thing wasn't just made up by some school district. It has really serious, credible origins. We're talking about the U.S. Secret Service. They developed these protocols after studying school violence. And the whole point was never about punishment. It was about intervention, finding kids who are in crisis and getting them help before they go any further down a dangerous path. And the research from the Secret Service is crystal clear. A real assessment isn't about profiling a student or going with a gut feeling. It's about finding specific, concrete evidence, things you can actually see and document, like concerning behaviors, signs of actual planning, or someone communicating their intent.
So this is not supposed to be some quick decision made by one person in an office. A real assessment is a careful 5-step process. It requires a whole team, a psychologist, an administrator, special ed staff, all working together. They gather information, they look at the context, and their main goal is to create a support plan. The goal is always intervention. Expulsion is the absolute last-ditch effort when nothing else has worked.
Okay, so that's the ideal. Now, let's see what happens when that ideal process gets twisted in the real world. We're going to look at a case out of Oklahoma City that shows exactly how a safety protocol becomes a phony pretext for getting rid of a student.
So here's the situation. You've got a 14-year-old Black student who has ADHD. He's been bullied relentlessly for 6 straight months, and it's even gotten physical. The school knows all about it. They've been told over and over, but they haven't done anything to stop it.
And then, after getting assaulted yet again, he says this to a friend. Now listen to those words carefully. Does that sound like a detailed plan for an attack, or does it sound like a cry for help from victim who feels like nobody is there to protect him?
And right here, this is where you can see the huge gap between the ideal and the reality. On the left, you've got the gold standard we just talked about. On the right, what actually happened to this kid? No expert team, just a couple of administrators. They completely ignored his disability and the months of bullying. And their goal from the start wasn't support. It was to get him expelled. I mean, context is everything, right? One of the biggest failures here was totally ignoring it. A proper assessment would have immediately seen that his words were a reaction to being a victim. But instead, the school acted like his statement just happened in a vacuum, like he was some dangerous kid making an unprovoked threat, not a bullied child at his breaking point. And it gets even worse. This student had an IEP. That's a legally binding document, which clearly stated his disabilities cause impulsivity and emotional outbursts. You know, the exact behaviors he showed. So by using his disability-related behavior as proof that he was dangerous, the school wasn't just messing up the protocol, they were actually violating his civil rights under federal law. So you might be thinking, that's a horrible story, but is it a one-off? Well, let's look at the hard data, because this is where we see it's a systemic, discriminatory pattern. This is where we find the proof. Just look at these numbers. They're absolutely staggering. In this school district, Black students make up only 15% of the student body, yet they are the subject of an unbelievable 62% of all threat assessments. Data like this just screams that the system is not being applied fairly. And if the numbers aren't enough, check out the timing of all this. The student's mom files a bullying complaint. 10 days later, she escalates things, emailing the superintendent and threatening a civil rights complaint. And just 5 days after that, her son makes his frustrated comment, and boom, the threat assessment starts that very same day. The timing makes it look a whole lot like retaliation, doesn't it? And then you get this, the smoking gun. An actual email sent between the assistant principal and the principal that lays it all out. The goal was never safety. The goal was, and I quote, to document he's a threat so they could get the family off our backs. It's confession right there in writing that the whole thing was a sham. Okay, this is infuriating to see. I get it. But knowing their playbook is what gives us the power to fight back. So let's shift gears and get into the solution. This is the step-by-step guide for any parent or advocate who finds themselves in this nightmare. Here it is, the parent's playbook. You have to do these 5 things, and you do them all at once. 1. Demand to see their written rules and the qualifications of the team members. 2. Hire your own expert to do a proper evaluation. 3. If your child has an IEP or 504, you legally demand a manifestation determination meeting. 4. Use open records laws to get the data on who they're assessing. And 5. You file formal complaints with both the Office for Civil Rights and the State Department of Education. It's a full court press.
So what you're really doing here is turning their weapon against them. By forcing the school to follow its own rules, by documenting every single mistake they make, and by bringing in your own experts and data, you transform their sham process into a mountain of evidence that proves what they're doing is wrong and protects your child. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Take a look at the policies in your own community, at your kids' schools, and ask yourself, is this safety plan really about keeping every single student safe, or is it a weapon waiting to be used against the most vulnerable? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.